What's up, guys? This is BC Kowalski with the Wausonian, and I'm joined by Devin Welch, also of the Wausonian, and we're here for our very first mayoral live stream debate. Something we've never tried before, and it's a brand new format. And the main reason we're doing it this way is we want a little more back and forth, and we want the candidates to interact a little bit. We will be monitoring it throughout the stream to make sure everything is kosher, everything's cool, and nothing gets out of hand too much. But we're very excited. We have both mayoral candidates in the green room as we speak. We'll be bringing them on in a second. I just want to explain the format a little bit. Basically, I'm going to have each candidate kind of introduce them, give a short introduction of themselves, why they're running or running again, as it may be, and then we're going to start with the incumbent. So we'll let them go first. But basically, each candidate is going to get a chance to answer. Kind of give like a 1-minute opening statement, so to speak, on the question, and then we'll let them go back and forth a little bit. Devin and I will be moderating to make sure, like I said, nothing gets too out of hand, but we do want a little bit of back and forth and a chance for the candidates to interact. So I think that's all I have to say, and I think we're ready to go. Like I said, I don't know how this is going to go entirely. I've never tried this format before, but I think I think it'll be interesting, and I think we'll get to know the candidates better by the end. So, Devin, what do you think? You have any thoughts to add before we bring the candidates on?
Nothing to add other than that I'm excited to see what they have to say and try out this new format. I think it'll be something of an adventure, but I think it'll go well, and it'll be good to continue in the future too.
Okay, great. Well, why don't we bring on the incumbent mayor first, Katie Rosenberg, and we'll have her give a opening statement. Katie, welcome to the show today.
Hey, thanks for hosting this. It's great.
Awesome. Do you want to give a short introduction and kind of tell why you chose to run for office again?
Yeah, absolutely. So obviously, it has been the honor of my life to serve my community over the last 4 years. I think that one of the surprises, maybe to every single person in this community, was the COVID-19 pandemic. We've been through quite a bit. And not to be missed, we also discovered PFAS in our water. So it's been an adventure the entire time, the last 4 years. I'm looking forward to continuing to serve this community. I think we have opportunity to capitalize on historic amounts of available dollars through bipartisan infrastructure law, through the Inflation Reduction Act, and of course, we still have a couple of dollars left out of our ARPA funding to spend. So I'd like to continue discussing this. But I want to continue doing good for the people of Wausau. I hope that over the last 4 years, they've already gotten to know who I am, what I'm all about. I want to provide access to our decision makers, to our community, and I think I've done just that. So thank you again for hosting, and I look forward to more of this discussion.
Okay, thank you. We'll bring you back up in just a second. Oops. There we go. And Doug, welcome back to the show here. And Doug, if you just want to give us tell us a little bit about yourself and give us a brief synopsis of why you chose to run for mayor.
Sure. Thank you, BC and Devin. And I think that first point, I think, is something that the mayor and I can agree on. We're both here to do good for the city of Wausau. I'm a former Army aviation officer, former company commander, moved to Wausau with my wife. We raised 3 kids here. We put all 3 kids through East High, and we had a couple of grandchildren along the way. And I recently retired from a sales career and about 2 years ago, and too young to do nothing. So I have an opportunity to give back to the community. So looking at where I can help serve again.
Okay. All right. Thank you, Doug. Now I'm going to bring both of you on, and we're going to start with the first question. And that first question is about debt. So obviously, this is something that's become a topic with the city of Wausau. The amount of debt is increasing. Mayor Katie said she would be bringing the debt down, but the debt has actually increased, I think doubled in that time. But as Mayor Katie says, some of that has to do with some of the decisions that came from the Milky administration. So we're going to start with Mayor Katie, and then the next one we'll start with Doug. Mayor Katie, what are your thoughts on city debt and how we can decrease it in the next term?
Right. So we obviously have huge projects that are either completed or underway right now with our drinking water treatment facility and our sewer plant. So those decisions were not something that I necessarily got a chance to decide on. But as we've progressed over the last 4 years, it's clear that we needed to address those issues, and we would not have been able to address some of our water issues without that planning. So that doesn't count towards our general obligation debt, which I think is what you're talking about when you talk about the debt doubling. But the good news is, if you look at our budget book, I know it's a couple hundred pages, but in there is a plan, a pretty aggressive debt reduction that both the council has agreed on, and I also have participated in this. So I think, when it comes down to it, they're necessary projects. We've had a lot of time in between when these were built and when we needed to have them updated. And so hopefully, as we move forward, we have a better strategy for addressing some of that maintenance, and we don't have to defer that. I understand we've been through recessions and pandemics, but I think we have an opportunity to continue planning for the future and remediating that debt.
Okay, Doug, your response to that question, how we can reduce debt?
Well, what I'd like to do is quote the mayor from 4 years ago when she said about Rob Milkey that under the Milkey administration, debt has doubled in the last 4 years. And anyone serious about reducing debt isn't going to go down that path. So in the last 4 years, we have gone down that path. Unfortunately, we're sitting at 236 million roughly in debt. Now that's counting everything, but that's how we do it. That's all of our debt. Plus interest is another 40 or 50 million. And we're looking at potentially adding more to that. So I think it starts with the budget process. We need to get a handle on debt. Let's commit to not raising it anymore. We've raised the debt every year in the last 4 years. To have a plan is one thing, to execute it is another.
Any response to that, Mayor Katie?
Yeah, it's always kind of interesting to have these discussions because I do get to propose things in this budget and you do get to look through it. But, I am not a policymaker, I'm the executive. And so I do rely on the teamwork of our city council. We've had over 60 meetings with the finance committee alone, including 6 meetings a year. When it comes to that budget workshop process. So, these are discussions that we should be having. It should probably be happening before a mayoral debate, but that's fine. We should continue having this discussion.
You guys can feel free to keep going.
Well, sure. That's an important distinction. The mayor does have the first crack at the budget. So the mayor offers the budget to the council for review. So that's the first step. And I believe the last budget process, the mayor said that the budget reflects our values. And I agree with that. The budget does reflect our values. And part of those values is the respect for the taxpayer who carries the burden. So I do think we need to make a more concerted effort to put limits on. We set a budget, we pass the budget, and yes, we have multiple meetings to get there, but so frequently we end up January, February, March timeframe with major additions and amendments to the budget process. So I think we need to start getting a little more tough on setting the budget, holding the budget, and doing what we say we will for the taxpayer.
Do you guys have anything more to say on that? Like I said, it's kind of open format once we do the opening statement. So
No, I mean, the only thing I would add is that this process, obviously, of governing needs to be agile. And that's something that we do rely on the council to participate in. We do get a lot of requests from staff with great ideas, folks who want to address the urgent issues facing people. We get encounters every day with the community telling us what they need from us. And so we try to be as responsive as possible. And obviously that means bringing new ideas to the council to talk through, to strategize about, and to make sure that we have the right focus on these issues that people care about.
Well, that's exactly right. So when our finances are in order, we are more able to be flexible and respond to those requests. I guess I'd look at it from a standpoint is I don't want to put the city in a long-term financial burden for any type of political gain. I'm not here to go anywhere. I'm here to hopefully manage the city. You know, the average person has to manage their household finances. They can't live on credit cards forever. And Brian, you're kind of a penny pincher. I think the frugal. You're a member of the frugal club of some sort. We watch pennies at our household, and I think we should start watching the pennies for the city as well.
I am pretty frugal guy. That is true. I can endorse that message. All right. Any further discussion on that, or should we move on to the next question?
Not unless you have more that you want to ask about debt.
No, let's go on. Devin has a question about the environment. So,
yeah, and so in her opening statement, Katie did mention the PFAS crisis that took place in the last few years in Wausau, and sort of on that note, how can Wausau respond effectively to environmental problems such as water contamination while balancing the cost to residents? And I ask that question because in a number of interviews with candidates, I've come across the message that people are upset about the increase in their water rates over the last few years. And I see that that's partially as a result of having to deal with PFAS in the water. So I'm just wondering about how to balance dealing with these environmental concerns while also thinking about the cost to residents.
Yeah, I think it's really important.
I'm sorry. Actually, we're going to switch each time. So Doug, I'm going to have you go first, and then Katie, you'll go first the next time.
Okay. I think the key word in that question was partially responsible. So we all, I think we acknowledge that there's certain things did happen. We had to spend money on, but there are things that are low hanging fruit. For example, the pilot payment, which is a hidden tax, is known as a payment in lieu of taxes. That's on your water bill. It's roughly 18%, or about $2 million that the city's taking, essentially taxing the utility for purposes other than water. So if you think you're just paying your water bill, you're wrong. You're putting more toward other city services. So that's low hanging fruit. And what's interesting is that if you read the Wausau, or you read the various interviews from council candidates, they all seem to be getting on board now with trying to bring down or eliminate the pilot payment. It's resonating with residents. So the unfortunate part of that is, to a person, they were all against it 6 months ago when we were talking about it in the budget. We had two cracks at it. In fact, one was offered by D3 Alder, who suggested we take it to zero. And I think, recognize that we don't want to shock the system. So we didn't pass that. But I offered maybe a more easier way to whittle it down, maybe 100,000 a year, and we'd be clipping in 15 years 1.5 million. We might be able to review that year to year and maybe make it even less. So what we want to do is reduce the upward pressure, which we already see. We have staffing shortfalls right now. In order to bump those up, we're going to have to either raise the rates or find a way to cover it within the operating budget of the utility.
Okay, and Katie?
Yeah. So what also happened during that discussion at the budget was that the council unanimously agreed that they wanted to revisit this pilot payment, but they didn't want to do it right then on the floor. They said, bring us the data, bring us the information on how we can make a thoughtful decision instead of being surprised by this. So I think that's a really important thing, that we've all agreed that by August, we'll have a plan together, at least the financing, to look at what we can do to ratchet that down. I think it's also important to note that it's not just the utility that does pay a pilot. There are some other organizations around town and municipally kind of worked on organizations that pay a pilot payment to the city too. So I have a feeling that once we address this utility one, we're probably going to be asked by these other organizations, hey, why should we do this? We're doing the same thing. You're taxing us. So we do need to think through what that looks like. But I will also say, we haven't had the opportunity, at least I didn't, I don't think the older did, really to weigh in on the project as it relates to building the new drinking water for treatment facility and the sewer upgrades. And again, those are very necessary. I think 4 years ago, I was sitting in the challenger seat saying, you know what, I'm not so sure if we need to do this. I think we should make sure we're working with the DNR. Well, you know what happened? I've been working with the DNR, and they said, this is really critical. You need these upgrades. And that's where the majority of that rate increase comes from. It's a $44 million project. The PFAS remediation is $17.5 million. We did get an earmark from Tammy Baldwin's office. We're really glad about that. And we'll continue working on gathering more streams of revenue to help pay some of this off. The lawsuits are part of that. We are able to capitalize on the remediation efforts. So I'm looking forward to a time when we have that first settlement in our hands, so that we can start talking about what we want to do with those dollars. Back in the day when we had the Holtz-Krause landfill remediation, the council at that time decided to put that in a fund where they would address environmental concerns. And we've been able to draw on that fund to address some environmental concerns across the city. So I think that's probably the opportunity here for us now, is to get those dollars in hand, have a thoughtful debate about how we want to spend those dollars, and make sure that we're doing it in the best interest of our community. I think it will make a difference once we have those dollars and once we're able to kind of reassess the financial situation. I think that's at the point when we can start talking about a new rate case.
Okay, and then we can go back and forth for a little bit. The floor is open.
Well, and I think that's a conversation we have had, and we punted on the PFAS settlement money. So let's commit now to take that settlement money toward rates and rate reduction and debt reduction. So rather than putting it into a segregated fund for someone else to decide later, let's send that signal today. Let's go back to the pilot again, and let's talk about my amendment was very small, because not only are we trying to reduce it in real dollars for people, but we're also looking, what message we would have sent. We hear you. We're making an effort. We've taken a notch down, and we're going to look at it next year and next year and next year. So let's take some steps in the messaging to our constituents as well. And it's interesting that the mayor discussed the DNR, because we've got several situations here in the city on city-owned property where we've bucked back against the DNR. So if it doesn't suit our message, so for example, the Cleveland Avenue, we tried to dodge having to do further investigation there because of a court ruling that maybe gave us a little wiggle room where we wouldn't have to potentially do it because it hasn't been well defined yet. But it really shouldn't take us, and I think the DNR's position is it shouldn't relieve us completely of that duty, and we should continue to march forward with that.
Yeah, it's interesting that you bring that up, but I'm going to not talk about that right this second. I will say that when it comes to the PFAS settlement dollars, we don't have it in a segregated fund because we don't have the dollars. We don't have the dollars, so there is no segregated fund. Or as the attack ads on me said, a slush fund. There's no slush fund. So just so everyone's clear, we don't have the dollars yet. The settlement hasn't happened. We're still involved in several other lawsuits related to PFAS. But when it comes to Cleveland Avenue, I think this is part of the discussion that we're having as a council. We need to decide what to do. And given the data and every bit of information, which I think the council deserves to decide how we want to move forward. And I think that's what you're seeing the regulatory body kind of figuring out how to move forward with this court case. I know they're appealing it. So this is going to be something that we need to continue to discuss. We don't have any groundwater regulations, and that's another reason we should probably be thinking about how we want to spend those dollars when it comes to PFAS settlement. We don't have groundwater regulations. We don't have surface water, and we're going to have to talk about soil. So we got to make sure that we are thinking through how we want to use those dollars the most appropriately, and it does include having council policy body discussions.
And I would agree. We have to have that discussion. I think we have had some discussion in that regard. At least what is our overriding philosophy on when we get these settlements. And I didn't use the word slush fund, but it's an apparent non slush fund, I guess, because we don't have it dedicated if we do get it. So I mean, at some point we should at least have an understanding with our residents what we want to do and which way we want to go with it. And I can give you one more example on the DNR, or actually it was the DHS. We had, again, city-owned property. It was a park in one of the one of the census tracts where we used the environmental justice to basically jimmy in this pre-baked lead service line replacement plan in the hollow, which is the neighborhood which also contains Riverside Park. So when we had the opportunity as a city to post certain locations where the DHS asked us to for possible toxicity that could be harming people, and that was a fairly well-used park with families and kids. It took weeks. It took weeks before. I mean, I don't know where the letter was, but it was in City Hall, let's say, until District 3 Alder got a hold of me and asked me if I could help cut through some red tape. So, cutting through bureaucracy at the lowest level is probably just as important to cutting through bureaucracy at the higher level and trying to bring things down the pike. Let's help citizens at the most local level in as much as we can. And there's a case where it was a simple matter of me getting a hold of the letter, finding out what they wanted to say, getting it into the sign shop, getting the right print, getting it in there, and getting it posted. It took about 36 hours to make that happen. Easy.
Yeah, I'm glad that we had the signs up for the 2 weeks before the remediation actually occurred. And that's something that can easily be asked for. I stopped getting emails from folks who are a little bit more excited about those issues a while ago, but obviously willing to work with folks. So it's great when we have people who come together and want to get something done. But I don't necessarily think that that's the most pressing issue every single day. You could talk directly to our directors on what they need to get it done, and you did. Good work.
Okay.
Thank you. And I would agree. It could very well look trivial to the outsider here looking in, but I think what we do in anything is what we will potentially do in everything. So it meant something to that neighborhood. In the grand scheme of it, is it going to? I would agree with you. It was 2 weeks, but it was 2 weeks, and it was something that was requested by the DHS. So I would say we shouldn't have taken the shortcut. It was like $50 a sign, and I drove them over. It was no big deal. So
I just want to let you know I'm not trivializing it.
No.
I do thank you for this, and I do think that sometimes it's helpful when you reach out to the executive of the city to help get this stuff done. So
okay. Yeah, that's probably a little tangential to the topic at hand. But Devin, do you feel like that question was answered to your satisfaction, or did you have anything you wanted to follow up on? Or anything?
I think it mostly was. I just had one question of clarification, and it may be a simple question to answer, but into either of you. But Doug, because you had spoken about the removal of the pilot tax, would that removal of the pilot tax essentially be revenue that would be coming out of the city budget ultimately, or would it be replaced in some other way?
Sure, and that was the argument that was made against it originally. It's obviously a revenue stream for the city, but if you're sitting there running the utility and you're operating the P&L there, you're looking at 18% of your revenue stream is flying out the window. So if you're trying to do things at the utility and add personnel, a good business person would look to way to stop the leak, pun intended there. So yes, we would have to put it potentially on the levy, and if we did that, then it puts upward pressure on the levy. But my point on that is philosophically, if it is good enough to take behind our backs, it's good enough to put on the levy and take in the open and transparently, and then alders and the mayor and staff will have to justify their spend, and that's the way it's done.
Okay.
I just want to remind.
Yeah, I do want to
I'm
move on
sorry.
to
I
the
just
next
can I just
question.
remind you, we froze the
I will.
pilot. We froze it. So
Yeah,
you did
yeah,
that as a budget. We did that.
yeah. I was going to move on, but I was going to give you a chance to respond.
I'm
But
good.
is that you're satisfied? Okay. All right.
Sure.
All right. I want to move on to economic development and TIF, and I think the way I want to handle that, I think there's few people that there's probably some people, but I think there's few people that said we should like never ever use TIF ever, and I think that's probably a pretty big extreme. But there is an argument. I know Peter Weinschenk has been kind of former news reporter, editor, and now now is kind of a TIF activist, so to speak. Is kind of raising the alarms on some of the excesses of using TIF too much. So I want to talk about the TIF balance, and it would be Katie, it would be your turn to start with. Where does that balance lie with TIF? How do we use it responsibly, and does WASA keep its districts open too long?
Sure. So, when it comes to TIF, it's basically freezing the tax collection at its current state and then not giving more if there's more gained on this property, not giving more to the school district, the tech, and the county. They're still getting some, but they're not getting any on the improvements for however long that TIF district is open. So I think one of the things about TIF, and especially in Wisconsin, is that we don't have a lot of different ways to incentivize these developers to help us build our community. And TIF is one of those things that we've used in the city for a while. And I think it was even maybe the first one was related to the mall project. So it is one of those things that we're familiar with. We have quite a few of them. We've closed a couple. We did have the opportunity to close another TIF district recently, but the council opted to leave it open in order to use that towards affordable housing, which is allowable under that law. So I don't know that we are. I don't want to say that we leave TIF districts open too much. I know we regularly analyze them. You can attend our joint review board meetings every year where we kind of go through these painstakingly and talk through what they're doing, what we need in order to close them. And the county, the tech, and the school district are also there to have these discussions. There's not really a good record in the state for how many TIF districts are open in other communities, what their general grant fund is, and how they're being used. So we've actually taken that on ourselves to kind of start collecting that. And that's something that we'd like to share with the rest of the state and our partners through maybe the League of Municipalities, maybe it's through the university system. But when I look through the list of our peer cities and things like that, we kind of land somewhere in the middle when it comes to what we give away to people. And then we definitely don't have the most TIF open, but it's something I think that we need to continue discussing if this is what we want to do to continue building our community, offering incentives to developers, or if we would rather see what happens if we do nothing and we don't incentivize that. I think that's an option that this council could consider. I don't know that it's as aggressive as maybe the community wants. I know that waiting for the mall to be redeveloped has been very hard for folks seeing that.
Doug, your response?
Sure. I think maybe the first thing we should do is look back and maybe take some lessons learned. You mentioned Pete Weinschenk. He talked a lot about malls, and we've seen that over the years. We've seen that handwriting on the wall. So we've had the canaries in the coal mine. So we need to go back and look. I first got involved. Probably the main reason why I got involved is because my alder was on economic development, and I was prodding him on the mall issue. They wanted to spend 3.4 million to move. I'm not going to get them wrong now, but one anchor to another anchor. It seemed like frivolous spending, and at the end of it, Rialto, that holding company went bankrupt. So we need to look back. Mike France is another example along the riverfront. We failed. He built the city for over $3 million of work that he did and didn't pay for. The city later came back and made good on that. We didn't have to, and again, I wasn't on council, neither was the mayor at that time. But this is a history that we have. We just recently lost Swiderski. Be nice to really figure out what happened there, because we heard the face saving press release on economic issues, but they're building everywhere in the county. Things are going well for them as a company. I think we selected them because at the time, less than a year ago, we thought they could handle it. Did we have enough bidders? It's another thing that we often get into is the single bidder situation. But some number of years ago, we decided that the riverfront was going to be rid of industrial, and it was a good thing to do. And we're going to develop it for what the value that riverfront property has. And I'd say we've been stuttering there for quite some time without a real plan, and we need to get a hold of that as a council, as a city, as a strategic plan. And if that's going to be a priority, let's make it a priority and make sure that when we do get somebody that we understand, they understand us, we understand them, and we hold them accountable to make it happen.
Okay, candidates, the floor is yours.
Sure. So I think that one of the things that we've done, especially over the last 4 years, is making sure that we're not borrowing to give those dollars to the developers. What we're doing is a reverse TID. And so once they start gaining, actually making a profit on their asset, then we start giving them money. So they actually have to get the job done before they get any dollars from us, which is really important. I think that was what was missing in the France deal. And, it does take some iterations to get it right. I'm not really going to comment on Swiderski. They were a great partner. They did their due diligence, and then they came to us and said, we're not going to be able to do this. And so I would love to have a more private conversation with you, Alder, to tell you more about that. But it's not, they were a great partner, and I look forward to working with them in the future. But I do think they followed every term that we gave to them through that development agreement process. They followed their due diligence process, and they came to us right away when they figured out that it wasn't going to work for them and their business. So I think that's part of it too, is having this open dialogue. I know it's exhausting for the community to see these exciting plans and then maybe have some of them fall through and we have to come up with a different plan. That's how we get to building the community that's right for us, and making sure that we have the partners that are in it and they're willing to get it done.
So then I think we're in agreement. If we don't understand the failure, then we won't be able to backfill that later on. So in order to move forward, we need to know, are we going to go to something similar? Do we need to shift gears on what we do there? How are we going to attract the next big opportunity along the river to keep that moving? We talked about the reverse TID, which, the one, it's still, at the end of the day, it's taxpayer money. And if you look at the city maximum, or the state statute requires that we do not exceed 12% of TID equalized value under a TID umbrella. We're currently at 15. So one of the things that I think we should do as a policy body is say, look, we're not going to, and there's a cap there for a reason. Let's figure out how to start retiring the TIDs and get ourselves under the cap. And we can't go to the state and ask to get it extended or get an exception to raise that. The limit is there for a purpose. It's there to protect the city. It's there to protect us in a downturn. You have anyone who's followed the stock market, you get greedy and you overextend, the market turns, and now you're caught in a real bind, and we don't want to be there.
I love that you brought up the policy body. We should be having these discussions there, because they ultimately do hold the keys to crafting the right policy. If that's something that this committee wants, that the council wants, we're doing it. You've asked for plenty of things, and we've done it. So I think that this is an opportunity to continue the conversation in the right place.
Okay. Sounds like we've exhausted our speech on that.
Brian, how are we doing on time? I'm not looking at a clock here.
Oh, we're great. We're about 34 minutes in, so we got.
I could add one thing here if I could. Sure. We talked about what the policy body wants and what business wants, but we also need to have some transparent, formal process to find out what residents want, and that requires public participation, and the more of that we can do, the better. We should be doing things in language. I mean, it's kind of a slightly different topic, but currently you can't even find the basic things on our hard to navigate website that's in a language other than what we're speaking here tonight. So we need to be inclusive of all those who could potentially be using that space. And the last thing I guess I'll ramble on here a little bit. The city currently has been farming out the planning to a university, and that's CITY, and they're the ones that came up with the statistics that the city currently does not have a plan for dispersing developer incentives. Yet of our peer cities, of the 16 peer cities, we're one of the highest dollar spending, not necessarily percentage, but dollar spending cities out there. So we need a transparent, formal process that does a more rigorous vetting. It understands the strategic plan, and we're not just leading with money. We're leading with why you should come to Wausau.
That is going to lead into our next question, but Katie, did you want to respond to that at all?
Yeah, we haven't farmed out our planning to anyone, but we did work with the University of Wisconsin-Madison on some projects so that these students and graduate students have the opportunity to learn a little bit more about what it's like to work in local government, which is great because we need folks who want to have jobs like this. And so it's been a wonderful experience. They're working on a myriad of projects for us.
Okay. Devin, I think you have a question about, speaking of bringing young people to town, Devin, you have a question about attracting not necessarily just young professionals, but them, as well as kind of reversing the demographic trends.
Right. Yeah, that's a good setup for the question. So the question is, what steps can the city of Wausau take today to ensure its growth in the long term? And what informed that question for me was thinking about, do the mayoral candidates have a long-term vision for how to grow the city, how to ensure the success of the city in the long term? How can they sort of create the foundation for that during their term as mayor?
And I think is this this one we're starting with Doug, I believe, right? Because we started with Katie last time. So
okay. All right. I would say I would like to, to coin the term "work where you play," and maybe that's already out there. But Wausau has a great and welcoming culture. We have, as a mayor, number one priority should be selling the city as a great place to live, raise a family, start and grow a business, and there's targeting young professionals. I guess we want to define what that means. I do believe we're probably looking at the late 30s, early 40s, people looking to come back and set up roots like I did 20 years ago with their children, and have a great place, have a great school system, and opportunity to work, raise your kids, and also work where you play. So we have countless amenities, and I don't need to reel them off. The mayor probably knows them better than anyone, with skating, canoeing, hiking, curling. You've got proximity to Rib Mountain for skiing. So it not only does it need to be it is a fun place to live, it should be an affordable place to live.
Okay,
Yeah.
Mayor Katie.
Absolutely. This is something I'm really passionate about, having both been born here and grown up here, and I stayed here. I just turned 40 and I've lived here my whole life. And it's because I love this community and I know that it has such great opportunities for folks. I had the opportunity to work in a couple different amazing industries, a Fortune 500 company, media. Now I'm involved in local government and also local boards. So it's a wonderful place to be. And when I think about the next 50 years, we're going to be one of those places that is going to be a place where people want to come no matter what, because we're looking at global climate change. We're looking at a variety of things that are changing the landscape and changing how people want to live. I met with somebody who moved here from Colorado, and they said they called themselves climate refugees because they were sick of the wildfires. And I think that's something that we need to continue thinking about, because not only are we behind, 525 units currently that we need when it comes to housing, if we're looking ahead 50 years and looking at where people are going to move, it's going to be here. So we need to be planning for that too. But we are seeing in kind of this mid-range, we're seeing kind of a migration out of this area, and not just Wausau, not just Wisconsin, it's the Midwest. And so we're seeing people going to warmer places. And it's because I think people can be outside and they have access to all kinds of different things, working from home, all of those. So we need to be the kind of place that has great access to internet, great access to things that people want to do to enjoy. But also we have to be very welcoming. I think that's one of the things over the last 4 years I was very surprised by, was just how many people were going to tell me that they've had experiences that were challenging to them. And we want to make sure that we're the kind of place where it doesn't matter what your background is, it doesn't matter what you believe, it doesn't matter what you look like, but you can find your purpose here in Wausau. And I think that's something we do need to focus on, both as a council, but each individual as well. I mean, we have to be welcoming in order to make sure that the 10,000 open jobs in our county can be filled, and that our schools can be filled with kids who want to learn. And I also, want to make sure that we're able to fill up that UWMC where I got my associate's degree. I want to make sure that that stays here. It's really critical. We're lucky to have great educational partners like NTC. We got to keep them.
Okay, candidates, the floor is open.
Well, I would agree with that. I wasn't going to use the word. I was going to use the word mass exodus. So who comes to a place where we're having a mass exodus? So I would say, it's marketing 101, sales 101. It's 3 to 5 times more expensive to get a new customer than it is to retain existing customers and grow your sales base. In this case, our business base, by retaining our own. And the mayor worked in the shoe business, so should be familiar with branding. And the brand that she represented was Foot Locker, and they had their headquarters here. They moved without much of a fight. So I do believe we need to fight for everyone we have, because in order to get another Foot Locker in town, it's just that much more expensive, that much more resources, that much more marketing. So brand loyalty should also apply here to Wausau. If you can work anywhere, like we talked about, remotely, why not Wausau?
I got to talk about my job at Foot Locker. I don't know that it's necessarily fair to bring in the machinations of a Fortune 500 company and where they decide to spend their dollars. But as somebody who was a hiring manager there, we struggled. We struggled to make sure that we could hire enough people. People were constantly being poached, and they were moving to warmer climates. So it's really, again, it's very critical. I don't know who's breathing very heavily. It's very relaxing, but I can hear it in my ears pretty intensely. But I do think it's important to recognize that, folks, we do need to be a place where people feel welcome. I hired several people who had had some experiences here, and they wanted to move to a bigger city, or they wanted to move to Florida. And we do still have a portion of that company here, but we do need to fill jobs everywhere. And I don't know if working on focusing on a giant get is the right decision. We've had a couple good conversations with folks, but they always ask, how many open jobs do you have in your community? And when you say there's 10,000 in the county, that's a problem.
Well, I guess one thing we'll agree on is we're not going to compete with warmer climates on warmth. So we're going to have to live with our seasonal 4 seasons here and sell that. I mean, that's pretty attractive to a lot of people who are outdoorsmen. But, this we started out in the lumber industry as a city and as a region, which morphed into pulp and paper, and eventually we got into insurance. Things evolve as we go. My crystal ball is probably no better than the 3 of you here, but we need to at least set our sights on and be ready for when that change presents itself, or those opportunities present itself. And again, I'll fall back on, let's retain those who we already have. They have more potential than in the short term than to chase pie in the sky or chase the whale, but we still need to pursue it. So it's like the sales funnel. You farm what you have, and you go out. The meat eaters go out and bring in the new ones. And if it's a small one, medium-sized one, it doesn't matter. We still need to be filling the funnel and chipping away at bringing jobs, because once jobs are here, the bars and restaurants follow. So and the entertainment industry follows. So we should not be leading with that as our strategy for economic development. Housing follows. Everything starts with jobs and financial stability.
And just to follow up on that real quick, if you don't mind, just in terms of clarifying, you were saying the focus should be on retaining the population that we do currently have. Were you suggesting that you would accomplish that with a focus on jobs and bringing jobs to the area, or how would you go about tackling that retention question?
Retaining the businesses that we currently have. So when I say customers, I'm talking businesses that are job supporters or job creators. So that's the basis of our tax base. That's how we grow the tax base, and that's how we grow the population. And it's never going to be equal, and it's never going to match perfectly jobs versus people. There's always some gaps there, but we have to work within that and always try to be growing. Unless our strategy is to go into a cocoon and maybe just cap ourselves at 38,000 people or whatever it is. I don't think that's the case. I think we want to grow not only as a city, but as a region. And, we're the economic hub of Marathon County. We're the political hub, I guess, of Marathon County. So we should be the leaders in all things business, all things related to quality of life. Wausau, I've been hearing some county, it might be a little tangential, but some of the county board candidates are talking about, where Wausau goes the county. So we need to be aware of what we are here, and it's a great place to be, and we should be acting like leaders in the region.
Katie, did you want to respond to that? Otherwise, I do have a follow-up.
Yeah, go ahead. Follow up.
Okay. I guess I just want to stick on this topic just for a little bit, because one of the things that I've really struggled with is I feel like I've heard this conversation about how to bring people here since going all the way back to the Gerald Mortenson's Why Not Wausau campaign, and frankly, it's probably been going on longer than that. What do you guys, and I want like a really short answer, Mayor, I'll start with you and then we'll move on to Doug. In a really short answer, what do you think is the number one thing that I can actually draw people to town? Because I hear things over and over. They always seem to sound good, but none of them seem to really make much impact. And I think of my own self, like what I choose probably doesn't make a lot of sense for a lot of people. I just kind of like Wausau because I think the cost of living is relatively low compared to other places, like bigger cities, and it's still like big enough that there's stuff to do. But I'm also not that exciting of a person anymore. So I guess I guess my main thing is like, in a fairly succinct manner, what do you think is the number one driver? Obviously, it's always going to be a confluence of things, but like, what is the number one driver to bring someone to Wausau?
Yeah, I mean, right now, I'm hearing from businesses who are hiring people. Mm-hmm. They have their offer letters and they show up and they can't find a place to live. So that is really a problem that we do need to help solve. It can't all be us, but that is a problem that we need to solve. We have great bones. We are a beautiful city. We are beautiful outdoors. We have great people. We're diverse, but we do need places where people can afford to live, and we need to move it around.
Okay, and Doug, and try to keep it fairly succinct on this one.
Sure, succinct. I would say similar to when I moved here 20 plus years ago. Opportunity. opportunity. So we had opportunity for me in my profession. We had opportunity for my kids in the school district. Did we lose Katie?
She's back.
Back. Okay, I lost her for a minute. Sorry. Uh,
I think I was given the
so
boot.
I unbooted you, so whatever happened, you're back.
So I'll stick to that one. Opportunity, I had it for my
Mhm.
job. We thrived here. My kids thrived here. Great school system. We should be working with the school district, not against it. And it's a symbiotic relationship. Some of the issues they're having with demographics are issues we're having, and quite frankly, some of the things we are doing will affect those demographics and could potentially help them long term with their plans.
Okay, and last question of the evening, and timing works out just about perfectly, actually. So this issue has been around. Also, oh, there I go blurry again. This issue has been around pretty much since I moved back to Wausau in 2015 and started reporting. The idea of having a city administrator or some sort of equivalent city manager, or even I think Katie brought up a chief of staff once upon a time. This idea keeps getting kicked around. I know some people that are against it have said, well, Wausau's already voted against it, but it was kind of a different situation and it was quite a while ago. And I think it's Katie's turn to start. So what do you think about the idea of a city administrator? Is it realistic? Is it something the city should want? And if so, what would be your plan behind it? And if not, obviously you wouldn't have to answer that last part.
Sure. Yeah. So I do think that it requires great amount of public input to have this discussion. And, we had a couple of discussions related to the budget, kind of last minute requests. We had some of those people asking, our HR director to draft up a job description. And, I don't know if that's the way to go about it. I do know that, when we did have that debate about it, was it 10 years ago, maybe? And the people voted against it. I think a lot of the elected folks said, all right, well, Wausau doesn't.
Oh, she's gone. Uh-oh.
Hello.
Again.
There you are.
What is happening, man? But I do think this does require an amount of public input. And I know that I've had conversations with our council members and they've said, well, I'm not interested in voting in favor of anything except putting another referendum question on the ballot, because that's how seriously they take the vote that was already taken. Now, I'm not opposed to it. You asked me how I feel about it. I'm not opposed to it.
Mm-hmm.
I think many good cities have administrators. And I think there are many good cities that also don't. So we can look at what sets those administrators apart. We can look, we've talked to some developers that said, wow, we don't work with cities who don't have an administrator. And so that's another discussion. They like to have that continuity of leadership, despite the political whims of a community. And so maybe that's something that we need to talk about. But, in the meantime, we have opportunity to maybe have a chief of staff, like I've talked about. Other communities, Madison has 5 deputy mayors. That's probably a little excessive for a place like Wausau, but, is that something? I would rather have a more robust discussion about that than maybe a one-off kind of last minute discussion at a budget. But I do think it's a discussion worth having. I'm not opposed to it, despite what you may have seen on billboards. But I think it is worth having.
Can I ask a clarifying question really quick? Are those deputy mayors, are they elected or is that
Appointed.
an
They're
appointed position?
Yeah.
Gotcha. Okay.
Mhm.
Doug, if you'd like to respond then.
Well, I would agree. We don't need several deputy mayors. I would agree with that. But I would agree. Let's have the discussion. It's something that's I think quite a bit different than what you mentioned, BC. It was several years ago. The referendum may not have been the sweetest referendum ever written either. It called for like the mayor to go to part-time,
Mhm.
and I think that was a hard sell. So, if we need an informed discussion, let's have it. If we need a refresh referendum, let's look at all the options, but we don't know what those options will be. And this has come up, and it's come up by professionals out there who have written recent letters that we've had education experts who operate under this same format. that are seeing a need for it. You know, it's an operational structure thing, and in the city hall that an administrator or a mayor brings to the city. And you know, I noted earlier that we're farming out development strategy to this university, which is a partnership with the university. uh, you know, they created a report for us, several reports, one on economic development and one on policing and other things, funded in part. You know, it's a policy factory up in or down in Madison, funded in part by unknown corporate entities. That's work that the city should be handling in-house. So that report came to us in December, and as far as I know, it has not been given to the Economic Development Committee or the council. So if we're having this type of work performed for us, it should be in the open. It should be given to us policymakers, or it should be done in-house. In either case, I think it speaks to a lack of organizational integrity that it would be very helpful. An administrator might be part of that solution, but we won't know until we put those options on the table. And I think maybe it's time that we at least I'll have that discussion, you know, and I don't think it's that hard. The mayor can call a committee of the whole anytime she wants. And, you know, if I have an opportunity, and I think I will do that, whether it passes or not, I don't necessarily have a winner or loser there, but I think we need to understand how it looks, what other cities are doing, what are the benefits, if any, and then sure, let's refresh the referendum. And if it makes sense to, and I think it does, if it's a major shift in our structure, let's let the people look at it and decide.
Okay, and then the floor is open to the candidates.
Thanks. So, 2 members of the council can call a committee of the whole anytime they want. That's what it takes. It's in the council rules. So that is eminently doable for anybody, if that is what we want to do. When it comes to the students at the University of Wisconsin, it's nothing nefarious. We're working with students. That's what we do. The county is working with students, the same program. And we're helping them understand local government while also kind of working them through a professional project. It does take a little bit of work, but there's nothing nefarious about that. So I'm perplexed as to how that can be viewed in that light. And if there's more that anybody wants to know about that, I would love to talk about it. I'm passionate about making sure that students get to know our community. We had dozens and dozens of students coming to visit us from Madison to talk about things from transit to how welcoming we are to talking through maybe facilities, and it's all based on what their major is. So there's nothing sketchy about that. But it is exciting. It's exciting for them, and it's exciting for us to have those conversations, especially for folks who maybe have been out of school for a while and learning more about how students are being taught about the process. We're not farming anything out. That is just not the case.
Well, I didn't use the word nefarious. You know, and I have nothing against helping students out with their homework assignments, and if we can partner with them, that's fine. The part that I feel that is lacking here is transparency, because I do not believe that we've seen this in the open, and it was published back in December, several reports, and I've only read a few of them because I was interested in the economic development one, but there's Cleveland Avenue discussion, there's Thomas Street discussion, there's a police discussion. So here we recently had been asked to add 2 police officers because of the cost of the unhoused population here in the city, and there's a report on restructuring of the police department. We didn't have that access to that. So if that's work that's done on behalf of the city, I think it should be shared when we are making major policy decisions. And I don't believe that we've been very transparent in that aspect of it.
I don't know. I'm not really ready to give you a student report without having staff look at it. So that's fine. I'm glad you got a chance to look at it and even participate. I know we had lots of community engagement in some of those. But again, I do think when you're talking about ideas like the police chief coming to you this week to talk about the challenges they're facing with our unhoused population, those are internal ideas from the police chief, from economic development, from our emergency team. And it's important that we have those discussions. But that is coming from your team that you create policy around.
Well, absolutely. And I think critical policy requires critical and professional staff work. If we have decisions that are being made and there's relevant information, now I think it's a little more deep than just a student doing his homework. These are significant policy issues that we have the university in partnership with the city developing plans, and I mean they're not small documents. I've printed a few of them out. There's a lot of work that went into these, so
Of course.
let's share them with council in a timely manner. These have been out there since December.
I will go
Are we
ahead
out
and
of
let the
time? I
staff
made
know
a
that
one.
you're very interested in these plans. I think it would be great to even have the students present to you. We had one presented maybe 2 years ago about putting a roundabout right in the middle of downtown. And you know what happened with that one? People were not excited about it. So again, some of this does require staff vetting because it is student work.
Okay, so I thought the real battle would come with the maybe the TIF stuff. I didn't expect it to come from a student report, but we'll end on that little note of levity. Guys, I want to thank you guys so much for, as I go blurry again, I want to thank you guys so much for joining the live stream and doing this first debate. I think it went pretty well overall. I'm going to give both candidates a chance to kind of give a closing statement / pitch to voters. I'm going to try to kind of isolate you. I'm going to let you go first, Doug, and then I'll have Katie, I'll have you go second. And let me see if I can, I'll let you go ahead and start. So Doug, your pitch to voters.
Okay, thanks, BC. And I would agree. This is a pretty good format. I think you did a good job, and I think we all did a good job. Everybody looks pretty professional out there. Got the little BC hanging on the wall. I like that. I think there's a clear difference here. I'm a leader, not a politician. We need a mayor, not a social media influencer. And I'm ready to take the challenge. I've worked in sales, I've worked in business, and I'm willing to take the steps that needed to get us to the next level, make Wausau a great place to live, raise a family, start and grow a business. Thank you, BC.
All right, thank you. Let me just
and vote on April 2nd if I didn't remind you already.
I'm trying to unspotlight. Okay. Oops. Currently, that's a lot easier to. Okay, sorry about that. Okay, Mayor Katie, your turn.
Awesome. Well, thank you. I just want to thank the people of Wausau for electing me 4 years ago, and then the preceding 4 years for members of my local District 1 for electing me to county board. It was a wonderful 4 years, despite how stressful it's been, getting through a global pandemic, getting through water issues. I don't think I am a social media influencer either, so there you go. I will tell you that when it comes to sales, I have been selling Wausau, and that's why we've gotten tens of millions of dollars in federal and state funding directly to us. So the council had flexibility to decide on how to spend. It really did take a lot of effort. It took a lot of lobbying. It took a lot of talking at various committees. It took a lot of begging at the federal level. And we got it. We got ARPA funding. We got 15 points, however many $1 million to work with. We got a $1.6 million earmark for our drinking water treatment facility. We got $5.7 million to address some of our water issues, including lead service line replacements. We've gotten a bunch of opportunity through bipartisan infrastructure law. We got an increase in shared revenue, and that was all work that I directly had a hand in. So I want to keep working for you, the city of Wausau. I do appreciate that you've trusted me over the last 4 years. You don't have to wait until April 2nd to vote. We have early in-person voting right now. You just stop in at City Hall and the clerk's office will help you through that. Make sure you pay attention to every race on your ballot. It's not just the mayor. We also have council members that are up for election. We have county board members. We have a circuit. We have a judge who's unopposed, but it's good to see that that's happening. And we also have 2 constitutional amendments that folks should be researching and making sure they understand and how to vote. So definitely make sure you get to the polls, whether it's early or whether it's on April 2nd. It has been the honor of my life to serve my hometown community, and I really hope that I am able to continue serving you over the next 4 years. Thank you, Wausau.
Okay, now it's in this format. Okay, there we go. All right. Well, I want to thank the candidates for joining us today. I think that was a lot of fun. Devin, thanks for helping out with the questions, and I think that went pretty well. I was pretty pleased with it, and we kept it to right around an hour. So, thanks so much. Thanks so much for joining us. Make sure you hit the like and subscribe button if you haven't already. Got to do the social media influencer thing. So no one's gonna elect me for mayor, I guess. So that's fine. But all right, thanks so much, guys. Mayor candidates and Devin, thanks so much. And for everyone at home, thanks for watching. I appreciate it. Hope you guys stay safe out there. And well, we'll see you at the polls.
Have a good evening.